Hello, my name is Serenity Moncrief,
I'm Ayana Woolley.
and the two countries we chose is China and the United States.
Why we chose these countries? They are each other's biggest traders. 16.8% of China's total exports, and the U.S. goods and services trade deficit with China was 378.6 billion in 2018. The distance from each other using air travel is 7,252 miles.
So China's GDP is $13.61 trillion, and the United States is $20.54 trillion.
What they export. So some things China exports is computers and electronics, machinery, clothing, furniture, chemicals, leather, and similar goods. And some things the United States exports is computer electronics, oil and gas, farm crops, waste and scrap, and electrical equipment.
So basically, this is the trade balances between the U.S. and China. Um, it's showing all their exports and how much they get from these exports from each other.
Interdependent and independent. So, United States, America depends on China because of a fundamental weakness in the structure of the U.S. economy. The U.S. depends heavily on China for providing the low-cost goods that enable income-constrained American consumers to make ends meet. And the U.S. is not very dependent because we still need energy and oil from other countries, which is very vital to us. And China is far more independent than the U.S., but like us, they still need oil to have their factories running. But China still has a lot of other resources where they don't need help from the U.S.
Chinese government subsidies. So they use tax subsidies, preferential loans, and grants. China uses practical subsidies, which rewards companies for accomplishing a social policy goal. They also use strategic, which advances the overall economy well-being of the country. The United States government subsidies, they use farmer oil, housing, Obamacare, and ethanol subsidies. The U.S. spends $100 billion annually on subsidies.
The benefits. China purchased 165 billion in goods and services from the United States in 2015, representing 7.3% of all U.S. exports. The U.S. exports to China directly and indirectly supported 1.8 million new jobs and 165 billion in GDP in 2015. Chinese manufacturing also lowered prices in the United States for consumer goods, dampening inflation and putting more money into the U.S. pockets. China shipped 18% of exports to the United States that contributed to a 419 billion trade deficit.
So the trade barriers and wars. In 2018, President Donald Trump began setting tariffs and trade barriers on China to force changes because the U.S. believed its trading practices were unfair. Trump imposed on additional tariffs on steel and aluminum, which is China's second largest producer on both of these commodities. China then announced raising tariffs from 15% to 25% on U.S. products. Both sides continued to threaten raising taxes. The trade war brought struggles for farmers and manufacturers and higher prices for consumers in the U.S. In 2019, Trump announced a trade deal between the United States and China. It was signed January 15, 2020.
Free trade agreement. China cut tariffs after it joined WTO but continued to steal U.S. intellectual property. China lowered its imported tariffs to 10% from 40% in 1990, and the trade agreement was signed on January 15th. The U.S. continues to pay 25% on tariffs on $250 billion worth on Chinese exports, and Chinese imports from the U.S. is 33% on average, while that on the U.S. imports from China is 14%. The trade agreement caused an increase in China's exports of manufacturing products and an increase in U.S. exports of various types of materials and services.
The succession of trade in the future. So by 2025, signing the free trade agreement, China's additional income would reach 327.1 billion per year, 2.4% of GDP. China and the U.S. increased their global exports by 3.8% and 1.4% respectively over the baseline. Their global imports will increase by 4.8% and 1.2% respectively over the baseline. The income growth of the U.S. will be close to $242.3 billion per year. This free trade agreement already is making trade fair for both countries. Thank you for listening. And these are our sources.